Just before you start watching this one, just a little FYI, this is two adults having an adult conversation. So if you have sensitive ears around, you might wish to pop on some headphones for this one. Enjoy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I did enjoy more inner perspective of these questions, which is a little
Mm,
bit different than when I'm on podcasts what they want to talk about, and I think it's a smart play
mm,
because when it comes down to it, we all do live inside our heads. That's where and
yeah.
they're just our bodies are a conduit to what we're doing in the physical
Hmm.
realm. So
Josh,
yeah,
who in your life gave you permission or made it feel safe for you to express yourself creatively?
uh, the probably the prominent person would be my mother. Although I did read the question weird. I'll just go into that first. I was like, I was like, who gave me permission? I don't think anyone.
Mm,
Does anyone really need permission to do art and make things? No. I'll just start with that. But then I will say what my mom did, who she was an artist. In my dad's family, they're all craftsmen and makers, mostly guys, 7 guys, one woman, so one aunt, and
hmm.
uh, it was just a part of my life, And so I think the magic of what my mom was for me is that I didn't have a parent going, "You can't be an artist because you'll never make money." I never heard you're going to be a starving artist. The way that she talked about being an artist in art was that it was an adventure and that
Hmm.
it allowed to be a part of who I was. And when she had kids that wanted to explore art, she just allowed them to do so. In fact, by the time I graduated high school, my room was covered in art just straight up on the walls. And to that day, that room that I no longer live in, but it's still there, is covered. Well, so many people who visit the house draw or paint or write on the walls. And so it's this
Nice.
little like art sanctuary there. So yeah, I think when I look back, I think of it like that, but it didn't feel as directly worded as the question as permission. Um,
Yeah.
and
And I think as well, it's when that answer came to me, it was about like some people don't even give themselves permission to
they
do
don't.
something.
That yeah, no, that's
Hmm.
true. You're right, and I think that's a I deal with it in blacksmithing a lot. Is you'll have people who will heat up their steel, and you only have seconds, right? So you get that hot,
Hmm.
and before it goes away, you have to hammer it. But a lot of
Yeah.
people are just afraid that they're going to hammer it wrong. So they heat it up, they pull it
Mm,
out, they look at it, and then it goes cold. And then they'll take 3 taps on it. It won't move because now it's cold. They haven't
hmm.
damaged it, but they haven't actually done the thing. They haven't made the progress. So a big part of what I do is just getting people to go, fuck it up. Just go ahead. It's okay
Yeah.
to mess it up entirely. You're a beginner. You're not going to get it right. There is no right, and there's now also because there's no right, there's no wrong. There's just
Hmm.
learning. So you start putting your dimples, you start putting your marks, start moving the metal in any direction, and then pay attention to what's happened. You use a round face. Does it move in 360? If you're using a different shaped hammer that splits the metal down the middle and it moves it side to side, and then as you start to combine those things, you can make something out of it. And yeah, I guess
Mm.
peeling back that layer of can I do this? Should I do this? It's it's a hurdle that I guess I'm not sure that I really had to face, or I was young enough
Mm.
that I don't remember having to face it. But
Okay.
people do face it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's some people I've interviewed in the past who have said that they just got told from a very early age, no, don't be creative. That will never pay. So it's
Yeah.
always about the money,
Hmm.
which I find really strange because inherently as children we are all creative. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got kids, they just are naturally their imaginations are wild,
Yeah.
and I think it's society or people in their life or something else that kind of beats that out
Yeah.
of people eventually. But some people will be told do it, go for it, like your mom, like
Yeah.
have fun, play.
Yeah.
mess it up, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
You're just creating.
Yeah. I was at a family wedding a few weeks ago, and one of my cousin's kids was showing me her artwork. And so I asked, well, are you going to continue to, I think she's a senior in high school, and are you going to continue to go on? And she's like, well, I'm like looking at what I could go be that I could actually make money at. She clearly loves art. She just wants to be an artist. That's a huge part of who she is. But she doesn't think that she can make money at it. There's been so I pulled up my phone and I showed her, like, I'm going to show you what I do, which is bizarre. And I've created this world that involves these dragons, and every aspect of what I do with the companies that I run is surrounded and just steeped in art. Without art, it wouldn't exist, or it would exist in this really boring, sterile way that wouldn't allow it to be as prolific. And I'm hesitant to use the word successful here, because that, I think, can be subjective or too long to break down what success means. But a lot of people come do it, and it's a very attractive business. And I'm totally fulfilled, whether I'm painting dragon scales on dragons, sculpting dragon heads, working on the website, just doing illustrations for another t-shirt. All of that culminates into the 100% of what this company is, and it pays for our life. And I have 5 daughters and a wife.
Wow.
And
5.
And we do well.
Jeez.
It's
5. Wow.
And what I tried to tell her was, if you pour yourself into it and your passion into it, people feel that and they get excited about it as well. And then it becomes more valuable to them because it stirred emotions, and emotions does equal money. And not that you're in it for money, but you're not in it for money, right?
Yeah, it has to. Yeah. Not just for profit. It has to meet a need, but also meet a need.
But that's a different way of saying it. Not just for profit is very different than you don't go be a starving artist. That's continuing on a mentality that really should be killed by society. Stop saying that artists are going to be starving. Stop that. Because when I look at the world today, we have the multi-billion-dollar video game industry, and video games are nothing but art and design, and even the algorithms, the math, the development that goes behind it is all support structure. It's like the armature in a sculpture. That's what that is. And people see and they interact with art. Everything is art in that. And that's a huge industry that takes a massive amount of people. And then you talk about the marketing and the advertising for that to get people to purchase. Every commercial you see, every TV show you've ever watched, any ad for any TV show you've ever watched, any product that you buy on any shelf in any store.
Yeah,
it's all covered in art. The fucking gas station's littered in art, And I spent years doing, I was a senior art director and creative director, and I did a lot of convenience store ads for tobacco companies. And it's art. I'm an artist. I use it. It's design. It's scientific art that is used to manipulate people into making a decision about a product that they may or may not use. They're going to use after they see your art on it, and that all equals money. And those companies would be nowhere today without artists sitting behind them and making them look good. So stop it, people. Stop saying that you can't make money as an artist. You may not be able to just paint whatever the fuck you want and be able to pay for your life. But what I'm able to do with my life is I work as an artist, and when I want to make my own art that personally satisfies me, I have the time and I can do it, and I can afford to do it. So there's
even with 5 children.
Even with 5 children. Yeah, I make art with my 5 children.
I'm just astounded because we made a decision a long time ago not to have children. So whenever I meet people with even 1 child, I'm like, oh wow, you must be the most amazing person. But 5?
5, yeah. So
that's a job. That's a huge
last
job.
night I was trying to finish up some design, and I was answering questions, and my 10-year-old came down, and she's
wow.
She just was making brilliant. This, and we were working on she was
fantastic.
flat painting here, but I'm like, create some texture and some life show some light and some motion. So she was working with the way to manipulate brush strokes to create it. So you just weave it into your life, make it a part of life, and it is, and then that like permission, and I guess that covers off on safe to express yourself, because if you're just allowed to do that, and so I guess I emulate with my own children what my mother did with me, and if they want to be an artist, great. And if they don't, then they can go be a dentist, like my oldest wants to be.
Wow, dentist.
Yeah.
Cool. Still working with tools.
Still working with tools. She's gonna make beautiful smiles.
Yep, there's gonna be perfect smiles out there. Mm-hmm. What was your first memory of creative expression?
Okay, this is gonna get weird. I remember the feeling of mostly biting. I was probably teething into a set of blocks in the early 80s that my great grandfather had given me, and it's often a memory. And I loved building with those blocks. I remember those blocks. I distinctly remember building with them and the feel of them in my mouth. And because I think it's so far back that I was still cutting teeth. And it is something that I know I remember it so well because I often think of it while I'm making things, while I'm even working with the product, making the dragons with the Paltaya, and whenever I'm welding, not so much when I'm grinding, but when I'm making things, I often think about those blocks, and they were this not perfect plastic like Legos are. They were clunkier. They were very young kids.
I think I know the one you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had this almost like foamy plastic feel to them, where you'd have the little white fringes of the texture because they weren't super smooth. And I just that to me that has stayed with me my entire life from just that young. And was I really making art with it? No, but I was, putting this together and that together and creating a structure.
Yeah.
So, and then I can't really, aside from, I remember when I found my first knife and started carving, but I couldn't distinctly recall I've been drawing with crayons, pencils, paints, it's just probably so much of it that I couldn't pull a moment out from that, but I would boil it down to those blocks.
Wow. That's quite incredible, because I don't remember that far back. Like I can remember my first memories actually of like I'm a big reader and I write. My first memories of holding a book and just like never being able to put it down, walking to up the stairs reading it, walking down to dinner reading it, sitting at the dinner table, and my mum having to say put the book away. It wasn't me expressing, but I think that my love of reading has led to me loving writing. But yeah, that's quite amazing.
I find myself typically a little bit of an anomaly. My dad was actually killed when I was just before I turned 7. And so I remember making the decision to remember as much as I could. So at that age, I started cycling through. As I would lay and go to bed, I would think about everything I could possibly try to relive of my life. And so I have a lot of memories from ages that a lot of other people don't have. And that did some good things and some bad things. I had to work through a lot of that in my 20s and heading into my 30s. I think I had that a little bit more under control, because it's a slippery slope of living your life in the past and not progressing forward. And so I really had to come to a spot where it wasn't sandbagging me, and that I was finding a way still to move beyond and utilize the skills that I had. And honestly, art is a huge part of that for me, and it probably relates to the next question. Go ahead and ask it, and I'll just keep going.
How did that become something you were passionate about?
It's the thing is, like, art became it's almost like it was a therapy as well for me. So I think that early childhood trauma art was also an escapism for the challenge of what life was. It was, we were a low income family. My mom was then unemployed with no husband and no
Mm.
income source. Social Security wasn't. I guess we got Social Security was the only thing we could live off of his. But the life insurance policy hadn't been paid to date. So
Mm.
it was. We went through this struggle bus period, and um, art was always a and you can get lost in it, right? It's you and a paper, a piece of pencil and a paper
Piece of
writing
pencil
stick.
and a paper.
Yeah, a piece of pencil and a paper is all you need, and
Yeah, it's all you need, guys.
or yeah, or a crayon or whatever it is,
Just
and
the end of the pencil will
just
do.
the
It's
end.
fine.
Yeah, just. I'm sure I have a pencil tip right here. All you need is this piece right there. If I
All
can,
you need, don't break it.
that
Don't
one.
break it.
A piece of pencil will do it.
Just one piece of pencil.
Well, just one. You don't
And
even
one
need
bit of
the.
paper.
You don't
Yep.
even need the eraser, people. Stop erasing stuff. Embrace it. So I think it then snowballed into a passion as you develop that and you spend so much time with it and you push it, and you can just go to a new world. It's much like, and I often as a reader, you probably appreciate that as well. Is it
Oh
takes
yeah,
you
escapism.
it takes exactly
Yeah.
yeah, and that's what art is for me. I didn't love reading. It took me a lot to find books that I did like, but I loved art, and you're drawing these situations, and when I'm
Mm.
drawing a scene about a thing or a character or an environment, I'm not just drawing that. I'm feeling and imagining and living this whole life of this
Other
thing and
world,
this
yeah.
this idea. Yeah, which
Mm.
is I don't know. It's just fun.
And that's what created the passion.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
fantastic. I love it. I love getting lost. That's I think that's why I loved reading when I was younger, because I just loved escaping. Like my whole brain would just be in this, and I can see the characters and I could hear what they sounded like, and everything was just there and painted this massive picture for me. And so words became very, very important to me. And when I
Hmm.
talk about, to people about being an artist, I talk about that as, I write poetry as well. I don't know if I'm any good at it, but I'm good for what I want to express, what needs to come
Yeah.
out. And I remember when my grandfather died, I was quite young. And then I found a book. I wrote a lot of poetry when my grandmother died many, many years later. And then I found a book, and I didn't even realize that my grandfather was a poet and he had like poems
Oh,
published. And then I was like, wow, that's really weird how that kind of came around. Yeah, but very, very passionate about reading. I wish it paid the bills, but
yeah. Yeah. Reading is one of those things that usually pings against the
yeah.
bills because yeah.
I
Uh,
know, you're like, how many books have I read this year? Oops, I better
yeah.
stop buying books.
A,
Um,
a couple of my kids are readers. One is just Jory, my 17-year-old. She just reads.
wow.
Also an artist though, and she
Mm,
also likes to write. So she's got that. I like to do a little bit of everything,
very creative, yeah.
and so we spend a lot on books, which is great. I love it. I'd rather
Yeah,
spend more on books than watching things. Although
yeah,
we live in a modern age, my kids watch stuff. I'm not going to pretend that my kids don't
yeah.
pull their tablets out or watch TV a bunch. They definitely do, but they also immerse themselves in these other things. So
And that's probably as a result of having such a creative, like, I don't know what your wife does, but having such a
she's an
creative father as a
attorney.
role model. Oh, wow. Okay. So, no,
Yeah, she's boring.
I'm
Right?
sure she's not.
No, she's not boring at all. But she always said she's like, oh, he's the fun
He's
one,
the fun
and
one. I'm just the
she
accountant. Yeah. I just do the
yeah,
attorney work.
but my wife's she's also a writer and and
Oh,
has
wow.
been an editor, and so
Ah, cool.
she's also very skilled. But what I love about her is when I met her, she goes, I appreciate art. She goes, I can't do art, but she's an appreciator, and she feels like she was one of the things she was created to do was appreciate art, which is really cool that we've got together
Mm,
because I don't know, it's very hard
yeah.
for me to be anything other than that, and
Yeah.
so it works really well. And not that we haven't. It's been just an absolutely interesting morph between somebody that is, um, you know, an attorney and very literal. It's not that she's always just literal either, and that she can't comprehend creative things. She certainly can, and we're a very great pairing for that. But I think it's a stretch for her, or has been a stretch for her, to imagine and go down the road that we've been and run the company. So we're business partners. So she's actually been able to leave the law firms, and she runs, and she honestly, without her, I don't think this company that we run together would exist. Because I'm not that person. I needed somebody like her to be able to keep the train rolling.
Yes.
And while I'm outside painting the colors of the train, or like fabricating the train, and she's keeping it running. So, without a doubt, we wouldn't be hitting and doing what we're doing without her as a company. She's, and that is great. I mean, you didn't go back to that first question. Who gave you permission or made you feel safe to express yourself?
My wife.
As a child, that was, the way I was raised. But in my life right now, if I answered that question for today, it is what my wife does in the role that she lives, that allows me to continue to be able to do that. I'm not employed by somebody else that pays me to do this anymore.
Nice, yeah.
I don't work professionally for other people anymore. I work for her. She's my boss.
Yeah.
And so she sets me up to be able to imagine wildly and build wild things. Now, we do have a couple of working guidelines. Number one, I've had to work at this in not waking up and just telling her all my ideas, because it will make her panic. And so I kind of try to plan a little bit more, and I try to work toward a reasonable way for us to get from A, B, C, D, or sometimes all the way to Z before I launch an idea. But I will launch into ideas a lot. I can't hold it all in. And so that's one of the relational balances that we've had to find, is just less blue sky. It's got to come with some intent, and I have to have some statistics behind it, and some pathway to how we're able to actually pull this off. So, and then in her exchange, is she won't just immediately tell me no or break down if I've taken that approach. But if I just if I wake up and I'm like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go out and we're going to go buy a whole bunch of this, and we're going to get foam, and we're going to build these things. And then we're going to make this mobile version where we, and she's like, yeah, stop.
Don't go any further. But you still don't get December off.
I still don't get December off. I don't think so. But I'm gonna make a whole bunch of cookies, and I think what I'm gonna try to do this December is work while my kids are at school, and when they're not at school, then I'm going to do family holiday things, because even though I think I am going to have to start, right away, I think I can do it at a pace that allows me to live a life. And honestly, a lot of that is thanks to Palataya, because it usually takes me 3.5 to 4 weeks to make one dragon head on its own. I have to, even when I don't use the sculpting medium, I have to use an armature system. I found that you make a skeleton before you make the skin. And I do that with my metal sculptures as well. So I start with the skeleton, and I do concept, I do the drawings and the render work first, because I want to make a dragon that is a thing and has a story and it fits into our world. And then I build off of that. And so there's that planning measure, which is all the planning is art. I've just kind of found a way to make sure that every bit of it is something. So sketching, dreaming, illustrating, then
I'm
fabricating.
working all the time.
Yes, but I don't feel like it at all.
Even when I dream.
I'm tired.
Yeah, but it's
yes. I'm tired, but it's all fantastic.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to make myself more tired tomorrow. And but now my times to get my details way up and my times way down, because instead of having to weld and bend, it takes so much more time to bend metal into organic curly shapes. With this product, I can just put rough armatures up, and then I can paltaya that whole thing. It's a verb now, by the way.
It's
And
I'll paltaya it.
yeah, I'll paltaya it. Don't worry, we'll paltaya that.
Yeah. And now you're saying
and
it
then
correctly, so it's all good.
yeah, I'm getting it. I told you I get it. One of the other cool things that I do with this is I'll take my Cricut and I will I will cut dragon skin, reptile skin textures,
Mm-hmm.
little holes, and then I will roll it into the outer layer of the dragons, and it will squish into the paltaya, and it will create the bump shape of the dragon skin.
Yeah.
And which has been pretty cool.
If you would like to join an online art community with a difference, then consider looking at the description box below. We are opening up an online art portal with a difference. So if you would like to ignite, elevate, and explode your creativity and work on your inner artist as well, with lots of coaching and mindfulness tips and all good things like that, then have a look below and register your interest with us today. We hope you enjoy the rest of the interview. What does the purpose of creating mean to you?
I would actually just kind of rewrite that as I would flip it, and it's no longer a question, but a statement, and that creating is my purpose.
Excellent.
And that's it.
Brilliant. Yeah. Love it. Love it. How do you remain connected to your creativity, art, on a daily, weekly basis? I guess it's hard not to with the job that you have.
I don't ever leave it. I'm obsessive. So I just live in it. I don't really fully sleep. Somehow in my teen years with art and everything, I just became a lucid dreamer. And so I know what I'm doing in my head almost all night long, which is kind of terrible, but also kind of great. And so even when I go to bed, but my brain is resting and my body's resting and I'm resetting, and it's allowed to just explore and take a hack at problems. So literally last night I went to sleep thinking about how I can use paltaya to create the forges for Frankenmuth that I've still, we opened that up in 2020, and I haven't had it's just, I love the base forge that we use, but it looks, it's crusty, it just doesn't look like, I want it to be a character, and a dragon doesn't make sense inside there. So now I've been thinking about that, and I wake up recharged and excited to take the ideas that I formulated the previous night and work them into existence. And the other thing is, even if it's not a project that I'm active on, if it's just an idea that needs to go into a sketchbook, I dump it there, because I can, and there may be a question later. Oh, the legacy question. I'll ask it. What legacy do you want to leave behind? This is tied to that, right? The question that you just asked about how do you stay in it? I stay in it because I want to leave a legacy. I want to make more than I can make, and I can't do it. I know I can't do it, but it pushes me, instead of paralyzing me or stopping me from doing anything, it makes me want to do more. So I think about, if my ideas are documented somewhere, and I have a stack of like 12 or 13 black sketchbooks that I'm looking at in the reverse of this meeting, and that's not the limit to my collection. Eventually, when I die, somebody might uncover them, or if I post it online, I post a lot of stuff that I'll never get to. And my hope is that somebody sees it and go, I'll make that.
Yeah.
If I've made it, you remake it. You think you can do it better? Go for it. You think you can do it worse? I don't care. Just somebody try to make this stuff, because I'm going to die, and I'm not going to get to do a seventh of the things that I wanted to do. I get to make this little set of what happens in my brain. And if somebody else can make any of that, it really doesn't matter that I do it. It just matters that the stuff comes to fruition.
Yeah. It's true. We're doing this, me and my husband are working through this book at the moment called The Luminous Self. And it's basically, it's by a yoga nidra teacher that we both absolutely adore. she said this, she did this thing with us, and it was basically like, it was, you put a list of do and don't do. And it starts off and it's very confronting, and it's like, you have, I mean, I've worked with a lot of people who are on the road to dying with my past job as nursing, and lots of people at
Oh,
end stage of
mm-hmm.
life. But this question was, you have a year left to live. I'll give you 60 seconds. What are you doing? What do you not do? And you have to write really quickly. And then she'll go, okay, stop. Okay, you've got 6 months, 3 months, a week, an hour. What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And as it got closer to the kind of, the columns, my husband said the exact same thing. He's like, I'd want someone to finish that book that I started 20 years ago that I've just
Yeah.
not had the time to finish. He's like,
Yeah.
it's there. All of it's there. It's very prescient because he wrote it about 20 years ago. And actually, it's not far off what's happened. Like, it's even gone further than what he thought would happen, but it's quite weird. And he's like, I just would want someone to take that and actually finish it. And I'm like, well, you need to
Yeah.
do it now then. You need it. And he's like,
Yeah.
well, I don't care if it's me or if it's anyone else. I just want it to have it there and then it's done. So I guess it's the same as I follow this artist called Ren in the UK, who's he's a rapper, and he's just kind of blown up, and loads of Americans are now loving his music as well. And he actually said that when he was ill with Lyme disease, he was in bed for like nearly 10 years of he basically lost his whole 20s to Lyme disease, and they
Mm.
didn't know what it was, and he had like psychosis and everything, kind of brain autoimmunity, everything. And he said, I've got about 1,000 songs, more than 1,000 songs on a hard drive that I wrote and worked on, that might never see the light of day, but I know they're there,
Yeah.
but they came from a very dark part of my soul. And he
Yeah.
said, I don't know if they'll ever see the light of day, but they're there anyway in case I ever decide to revisit them, or I get strong enough that I feel I can revisit them. So I
Yeah.
guess it's the same kind of thing. Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, if the question I asked was, how do you remain disciplined when it comes to creation, or what keeps you going? Feel you've kind of answered that, but I'd like to kind of soften the hard edges of that
Yeah.
masculine word, discipline, and kind of think, well, how do you devote yourself to your art?
Yeah.
But I think you've kind of answered that.
Yeah, and I don't mind the word discipline with that either, because I think that's actually, it is pretty accurate. I think I'm fortunate enough to have a pretty obsessive personality that helps make it easier for me to stay disciplined in it. But I do find that creating habits of and just staying in your habits. So when I drink coffee or mud water or whatever it is I'm drinking in the morning, I tend to have my Sketchpad or my Procreate out, and I'm just or it could just be a napkin or a bit of pencil and a paper. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But keeping exercise. I also find that, and for me, I pop around in a lot of different mediums. So I'm working metal, I'm sculpting, I'm drawing, I'm painting, I'm doing digital art, and occasionally, sometimes even a little bit of glass here and there. What I find that I have to do is, the core of that for me is the exercising of my traditional art skills and my finger dexterity. So smithing, it is really easy to end up with issues where your hands are curled and gnarled around hammers and tongs, so they can they tend to want to and of course, as your muscles go through your body, everything tightens up and it pulls them in together. So and also you can end up getting shakes from that, not like caffeine shakes the same, but it's sort of like adrenaline shakes, I guess. I wouldn't know how to describe it, but years of working with physical labor have play a different effect on me than when I just professionally worked as an artist. I didn't have to deal with the same issues. Now I have to deal with this added body shift or body performance issue from a type of art that I'm in. So I have to keep going back and making sure that I keep my other skills exercised with it, so that I can still have that pen and pencil bit control while I'm working, so that I don't end up with the shakes in my art, because I'm still daily, even if it's 15 minutes, I'm still in it. And that also allows, and that allows me mentally to do a thing. And even if it's not creative, even if it's just doodling. And sometimes I can't think at all, and my brain is just inundated with creative thoughts and ideas, and I do get overwhelmed occasionally. And what I'll do is I will revert back to drawing exercises that I did many years ago that are based out of that book, How to Think on the Right Side of Your Brain, or How to Think
Mm-hmm.
Like Leonardo da Vinci. One of those, both of those books are really immensely helpful. And, you might draw a swirl this way, and then you'll draw a mirrored version of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And that what that does for your technical skill and your mental skill, it really increases both of those quite a bit. And even if it isn't massive creative expression, you're working towards keeping skills honed so that when you need to use it, it's there and it's ready to go.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Wow, you have really good answers. You have really thought about this. I like it.
I live it. It's just life for me.
Yeah. So I guess the next question was, do you have any rituals around making art?
I did try to think about this, and I think it's more like I fit my art into things that I'm doing, as opposed to the other way around. And that way I can always be in it. I keep a little bag. Is it down here? It's not down here, but I also keep this. I keep this bag inside my bag. It's a little Grogu bag from Mandalorian that I keep. It fits a couple sketchbooks. My iPad fits in there, and then I could fit, I even have a carpenter's pencil in there because you never know when we're going to need that. Pens, like different colored leads, markers, blending marker. So I keep my tools at disposal, and even if I'm at Disney World with my family, I have that bag. And when I'm sitting around, not riding a ride that I'm not interested in, I'm arting everywhere that I go. I'm driving in the van. If we're driving to church for 30 minutes, I'm arting. If we're going on if I'm passenger riding on a 14-hour drive to go see one of our family members, it's there and available as if I'm a kid. As my mom's like, "Oh, here, little kid, you're like,
here's your crayons."
I brought the coloring book for Johnny, so he behaves himself. I pack my own coloring book, and I keep a snack in there. Yeah,
my little art kit. I love it.
Yeah,
let's go.
Have art kit. Will travel. I almost don't go anywhere without it because sitting on an airplane. That's what I'm doing. I'm doing that on the airplane. And so to me, it's less about the rituals I create to get into, to do art, and more of using art to make the bits of life less boring.
I like.
Don't tell anyone I said that. My life is not boring.
No one will find that out.
Okay, cool.
No one will watch this. It's all good.
But, music, though, is a really big part of art for me and my process.
Okay.
And I'm one of those people, I can and will listen to the same song for a week straight. When I have a massive task to do and I find a rhythm, I'm in it entirely. And sometimes it's a gorilla song. Sometimes it's, I get a lot of Tom Petty's Running Down a Dream keeps me in the thing. I like Aqua. There's a couple Aqua songs that will work for me.
Excellent.
I know it's so weird, but
it's your thing, right?
Of music, and then sometimes it's Enya. People are like, I bet you listen to heavy metal all the time. I'm like, I can't stand heavy metal. There's too much dissonance.
You've got the whole sail away.
Yes. I'm like in these headphones, and they're like, you must be listening to something good. And people are going, this is terrible. This is the worst music. You cannot be a metal artist and listen to this. Well, I am.
That's funny.
I run pretty high energy, so for me, a lot of the music I listen to is calming and centering and has a rhythm to it that I can just ride in.
Yeah.
So
I am listening to Frozen. Yeah. Well, look, you have like 7 girls, right? So how could you not have been exposed to a very eclectic mix of music?
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Or do you have any core beliefs around
That's a
creativity?
good question. Let me check the notes because, oh, I do. I do have core beliefs. I spat them out very quickly. I
Mm-hmm.
made them last night. Um, First off, creativity belongs to the world. It's not mine.
Yeah.
Nothing that I make, I own. We own nothing. We own none of it. It's not
Nothing.
ours. And everything that I make, I want to make for other people to enjoy. That is the point of an artist, right? And I also want to enjoy it as well. So I'm ever hunting down that perfect combination of making art that I love to make and that people like to digest. And when I'm on that vein, I'm probably the happiest.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I make art just for fuck's sake or just for myself. And a
Yeah.
lot of people may not like my style. I really personally like German trash art. It's
Mm-hmm.
just
Okay. Yeah.
super industrial and raw. And it
Mm.
sometimes I've been able to weave it into some professional projects, but for the most part, it's just kind of like a thing that I like to do that most people don't see that
Mm-hmm.
version of my stuff. But even that belongs to the world. You share it and you be shared. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what I've got. And if like it's the same thing with my sketchbook. I mean, I just can't make it all. So
Mm-hmm.
go ahead, take over. If
Yeah.
you can do it better, if you like this idea, run with. People do write me a lot, and they go, "Hey, I saw you make this knife. Are you gonna make this, or can I take a hack at it?" Yes, go ahead, please do,
Yeah.
and
Because
send me
everyone's going to
pictures.
have their own personal touch to it as well. It's not going to look exactly
Hmm.
how you imagined it, or yeah. So
Yeah.
I think you're right. I do, and it's funny because when I said earlier about working with people at the end of their lives, I worked with a lot of people with cancers like leukemias, lymphomas, myelomas, um, and a lot of them. It was so interesting for me to get these lessons without having to be there myself. But a lot of them, when they got near the end, they would look at me and they'd say, people think that money is important. And this one guy, I'll never forget, he said to me, I own 3 houses around the world. I have a Ferrari. I have all this money in the bank. He said, and I'm dying. And all I care about is, was I loved and did I love enough? That's literally it.
Hmm.
And he said, and I heard
Yeah.
that again and again and again towards the end. It was like, why was I worried so much about how much I had in the bank account or how much, it was like, just do what you're going to do and enjoy it. And it doesn't
Yeah.
belong to it. It's just, you're just letting it come through you and pass through you. And that's when I
Yeah.
watched an interview with that artist last night. It was about, he said about, he doesn't even feel like it's him doing it. He said, I feel like I'm just taking from somewhere and it's just coming through me
Yeah.
and I'm doing it. So I can't even take credit for it because it's not mine really
Yeah.
to take credit for.
Yeah.
And I like that idea. It's
I
very,
like
yeah,
that.
it works for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
um,
It's definitely. I'm not sure I quite feel like it's somebody else because a lot of the art I make hurts.
mm,
But you get burned. I get burned a lot, and
I
so I
bet.
definitely have like this like feel of it. But I feel the same way as that
Hmm.
artist. It doesn't. It comes from somewhere else. The truth is, and people are like, oh, you're so gifted. No, I'm practiced. I'm practiced.
Yeah.
But so I don't quite believe as purely that it is a gift that gets dumped down on you by God, but I definitely am predisposed to be interested and invested. So it's easier for me to be practiced because I love the practice of it.
Yeah.
But it like, how do thoughts get in my head? Where does that come from? Does that
Yeah.
really come from me? Where do these ideas I mean, and look, truthfully, when I look at the Dragon Forge experience that my wife and I run, she was the one who suggested that I build the um, the dragons around the forges to be able to get them in the rent fairs and hide the modern equipment.
Mm,
Not my idea, but I am blessed to get to make the art for it,
yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
even have to be. It wasn't not
Wasn't
even my
even, yeah.
idea. It's my wife's.
Yeah.
The person that we were like, she does the boring job, had the best
Actually,
idea,
plot
right?
twist. Yeah.
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 So,
She's the one.
and that has really led to all this cool stuff that I get to do within these mediums that I get to play with, um, and and our job is to share that with the world, both of us, my wife and I. This is what we
Yeah.
live to do right now.
Yeah.
and
And
hopefully
that's,
leave something for the kids.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Don't do what my mum and dad do. They said, instead
Yeah.
of like, my husband and I, they always call us dinks, double income, no kids. But yeah, it's funny because we call them skiers, spending the kids' inheritance.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. I hadn't heard that one. That's
Yeah.
brilliant. I like that.
We're like,
Yeah.
you just go off on your cruise.
Yeah.
Don't worry about us. We'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Um, so what gives you the self-belief to keep creating? I guess you get mad feedback for your dragons and everything you do.
Yeah. I,
Mm.
yes. Yeah. It, how raw can I be on this interview?
As raw as you want.
Okay. Um, there are a lot of what I call blowjob days, which is essentially people showing up at the Dragon Forge experience before we open, usually, or even while we're opening. And I'll walk
Yeah.
the crowd, and I'll stand there, and I'll hear people, and they're like, "Oh, this is so amazing!" And it's
Mm.
a little bit like getting. I've told this to my wife. She's like, "That's an odd term. You should never tell anybody that." And here I am talking about getting
And
art
here you are.
blowjobs.
Yeah, here you are.
Yeah. So but it's like sometimes when we're doing setup and stuff, it's a little, and it's not even my term. I didn't coin this term. I actually
Mhm.
think it was an accidental term because I misheard Chris Henley, who's my glass blower, who also works with us as
Yeah.
well. I thought I had heard him say that one day, and he's like, "No,
No.
I don't think I said that." But he's like, it does fit. It does fit. But you get these people who run over and they're like, "Oh, this is so cool," and you have so much shit to do, but these people are complimenting you. So it's
Yeah.
hard. It's just like, okay, fine, I'll take it. Let's
Mm.
do it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
And it's so, no, it's nice. And that is all uh, really great for the ego. But I think ultimately, when I read this question, I struggled with it. Being able to find an answer because I'm still not even sure that self-belief has anything to do with it, but I know we talked about earlier and how some artists, they don't know and they need that permission. And I struggled with
Mm.
that one too, just with the word permission, because it's, for me, these aren't words I think that I've struggled with, and maybe I'm fortunate with my upbringing there, but I don't feel like I need a self-belief
Mhm.
or to believe in myself to keep going. I just like to do it. I
Yeah.
don't know that it's going to work out. Sometimes I don't even care that it's going to work out. It's just the fact that I get to try to do a
Do it.
thing
Mm.
is what keeps me going. So the self belief, I mean, I come into a lot of projects and I'll tell my wife, I go, "There's no way I can do this.
Yeah.
No way at all. Like, you want it by this date? We have to be open by this time. I want them to look this good." And there's zero chance that that's going to happen. And I said that about Texas a whole bunch of times, but I have literally no other option but to wake up and push forward and do it. And what I believe about myself matters zero at all. The only thing that matters in my day is that I put as much into it as I possibly could and tried to make whatever I did that day the best that I could in
Mm.
that time frame, while setting myself up to be able to springboard more on it tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it fully
Mm.
answers that question, but I think mentally that's probably where I sit with art and creativity, and continuing forward. I also think I'm like massively there may be a layer underneath myself, and while I can be fairly chill, I also think I know that I have a lot of anxiety about not being able to do everything I want in this life.
Mm.
So I'm working as furiously as I can to
Yeah.
get as much done as I possibly can. And that is probably exaggerated by, my father's early death. I know from a very early age that I could die taking my children to school, or like
Yeah.
returning from school today. It could
Mhm.
all be over. And whatever
Mm.
I've done to this date, that's it. The legacy I could create, what I can give to my kids, what I can teach to my kids,
Mm.
it's all out there.
Yeah.
So if every minute that I have in making stuff, they can look back at and they can see and they can go, okay, this is how he solved this. Maybe I
Yeah.
predisposed to do that as well, and I can be successful at that.
Hmm.
I had just this little stack of work that was left over of my father's as a craftsman, and I watched him pinstripe cars, and he was into a bunch of different stuff.
Hmm.
Definitely a polymath, and um, and I think as my uncles and other family members have showed me some of his other work, and my mother did, and her peeling back some of her work, I know that has helped me and framed me a lot as well in the decisions and the way that I approach the work that I make as well, knowing, okay, I can handle this.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I can, oh, we need a building. Okay, fine. I can build a building. It's just building. You're just stacking one thing on another in a way that keeps it from falling. It's not that difficult. So, and we need it, and we can't afford for somebody else to come up with the plan. So I just say, there's
Yeah.
no choice. I just have to. So I do.
Hmm. Yeah. It's funny because I in the last, like in 2020 when the whole thing happened, I also was diagnosed with a chronic condition and had to have surgery and put on a bunch of weight. And and after it, I got to the point where I was like, wow, I'm not the person I was before. But it's like your father dying, it's a transformative experience, something traumatic that happened that kind of gets you to the point where you're like, I don't want to waste another day, because there's a lot
Yeah.
of times in my month when I get so fatigued that I can't actually do very much at all in the business. So I have to
Yeah.
kind of say, okay, like we've worked really hard to get to this point, but now, we can't work as well. I can't work as hard as I used to. So when I can, I really
Yeah.
go all out. And then other
Mm-hmm.
times I'm like on the couch, and literally my husband calls it my transatlantic flight days, where it's just
Yeah.
like, you ain't doing anything. You're just going to sit
No.
there and you're going to be served, and you're not going to do anything. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
But it's like that opportunity, there's always opportunity to be doing. And I think we've done that so often that I've got to the point where, opposite from you, where I'm like, I need to
Yeah.
work in a lot more rest into my
Yeah.
day now. So I'll do like little bits here and little bits there, and just can do what my
Yeah.
energy allows me to do. um but yeah, it's a nice lesson to learn, right? It's yeah, you can do what you can do, but don't beat yourself up if you can't do it. And
Yeah.
because a lot of people might watch this and they might think, oh god, because instantly, like I interviewed someone the other day, and instantly when he said like, oh, I can't not draw, or I can't not create, and I was like, wow, Yvonne, you should be writing. Like, you should be writing right now. And then I started
Yeah.
compare, like in my head, I was like, oh, you've not been doing that as much. And then I was like, give yourself a break. I'm not even going to ask. Well, I'm going to ask, where do your ideas come from? But you've kind of answered what keeps you inspired to
Oh, no,
create.
I
That
have a
kind of
really
pretty
fun
much.
answer
Oh,
for that.
okay, okay. Well, then, what
Yes.
keeps you inspired to create?
Well, at first, I'm going to answer where do my ideas come
Okay.
from.
Mm-hmm.
Lucid dreaming,
Mm-hmm.
necessity, showers, and long shits.
Love it. It's the
That's
best
it.
answer.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think people underestimate the power of a long
They
shit.
they really do.
I do.
Yeah, I saw a meme the other day that was like, "Men, what are you doing in the bathroom that takes you so long?" I'm getting brilliant ideas. Don't
Ideas.
interrupt them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do not. My mum
My
always said that.
I
That
can't
my
feel my legs, but my
yeah,
brain is like
I'm completely
ticking.
numb from the waist down, but it's fine. I got a great idea. So the last thing I wanted to ask you was, if there is something that you could suggest, three things that you could suggest to people who are maybe like myself, sometimes struggling to connect with their art, or they feel like they just aren't good enough, or they've got some
Yeah.
self-doubt. What would you say to those people listening that are just like, I
Yeah.
can't.
I I have three main things that I think I would leave them with, and the first thing is to whatever it takes, you have to separate yourself from your inhibitors
Mm,
of the art, and whatever that
mm,
is, mentally or whatever. And if that means that you just do it, like take a piece of paper and throw paint at it,
mhm,
mess it up. If you're worried about making mistakes, then just start out by making the mistake. Make a mistake piece of art and then build off of that.
mhm,
um, I've been talking to my 13-year-old a lot about this, and she does a lot of art, and I have a 10-year-old, and she likes to cross things out when she makes a mistake, and I'm always like, don't cross it out. Let the mistake it's a documented bit of your journey. So then Josephine, just last night, she was telling me how she started to play with pen more, and she goes, once it's there, it's there. It's just what it is. And so if you
Mm-hmm.
make a mistake, you either have to make something out of that mistake, or you have to
Nice.
accept that there's a
Wow,
mistake
great
in there.
insight. Yeah.
Yes, and move on. If I'm like 13, that's a good, it's exactly right. And
Yeah.
so if you're feeling it, and I do feel this occasionally, there are times it'll take me a long time to do something because I haven't worked out if I'm going to be successful at it or that it's going to be good. And eventually I get to a point where just have to go, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if I'm good or not. I'm just going to
Yeah.
do a version that nobody needs to see. I'm just going to do it to push myself through that barrier. And we do
Yeah.
have those barriers. And the best way is to just go, just go, kill the
Mm-hmm.
inhibitors. Have a glass of wine if you're, legal drinking age and you need to, like,
Yeah.
look,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say get hooked on substances, but, if you,
No, I know what you mean. Just to
definitely not
relax.
trying to
Like,
say get hooked on substances,
kids don't take
but
drugs.
yeah, don't take
But
drugs.
yeah.
Adults don't overtake drugs.
Yeah.
But there are ways that you can help yourself loosen up to get
Mm.
past those walls so that you
Yeah.
can get to the art.
Yeah.
And it doesn't require drugs to do that or
No.
alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not saying that it couldn't also be an aid. Also, the other thing is put down the social comparisons. We live in a world where other people's art and others' work and other people's progress. You might see a 13-year-old who's better than you at art
Mm.
and you're 40, or
Mm-hmm.
like I've been working in Photoshop for a long time, but I just got Procreate in December. So I'm
Right.
not really great at
Yeah.
Procreate yet. And I see kids who are brilliant at it. And
Yeah. You're like,
yeah,
how?
but I can't let that stop me. And I go,
No, 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 no.
my style in Procreate is very traditional paper thing where I do it
Mm-hmm.
like I'm drawing. And
Yeah.
that's okay for me to not have the same Procreate style as a YouTube channel or this other person or that
Yeah.
person. I can have my own unique take on it. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
able to separate yourself from those social media comparisons in that world that inundates us and is forcing us to endlessly ticky tacky ourselves against
Yeah.
other people to put ourselves in a thing. None of this matters. None of this really matters when it comes to art.
Mm-hmm.
You got to find a way that you can just do it without worrying about what people are going to perceive of it when you post it. And I know that's a tricky thing because you want people to appreciate it, but you also
Yeah.
can't give a fuck whether or not people
Whether they
appreciate
do.
it.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And I think the last thing that I would say is try to discover, if you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
discover what it is you want with your art. What are you trying to do?
Yeah.
So, for instance, I just always wanted to make art and I like to oil paint. I painted a lot when I was growing up. And I thought, oh man, it would be really great to be a painter. But I also wanted to make money and I really love problem solving. And when I was a senior in high school, I joined a graphic design program and it blew my mind. I didn't even know that it existed. I didn't know that commercial art was a thing. I guess I didn't pay attention. I just thought I just was thinking about it as fine art. There's either fine art or animating for Disney.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I thought. And then when I went
Yeah.
to this commercial design program, I realized that there was a world in which you can make art and make money. And that to me seemed like I was okay with making money, even if it meant that I wasn't doing my fine art, just so long as I
Mm.
was still being able to make and create and be in it.
Yeah.
And so I kind of adopted this mindset of um, it, what I was willing to accept out of the art that was going to be the primary source of art in my life was not going
Mm-hmm.
to be attached to the personal fine art that I might make,
Yeah.
that I was going to be a career artist. And then that would afford me the time to make whatever I wanted on my own when I had that time. Now, that might be different for somebody else. Somebody might go, I don't want to work for anyone at all. I just only want to make my art. Actually, my sister, who was not an artist growing up, she grew up and she is a fantastic painter. and she lives in Czech now, and she paints. And she, when she lived in Toronto, she made she had one of those sip and paint type companies where she would paint and people would follow along with her. But she's just
Mm-hmm.
really beautifully crafted her art, and she was able to make money at it as well. But what she does is, the reason she got in it was to de-stress and drop anxiety in her life. So for her, it was just purely an escapism and a joy and a mental, like a mental
Yeah,
exercise for focusing and centering her life, which is
mm,
a therapeutic reason for art. And that is great. And now that doesn't mean that you can't do therapy and make money on it. Just talk to any therapist.
yeah,
They're going to do it. So,
yeah,
and I want to I do keep trying to tie that back, because I do talk to so many people who won't get into art or will abandon it because they don't think that they
mm,
can make a living at it.
yeah,
And that is a tough thing to consider, and a tough thought to get in. And so, which brings me back to that point of discover what it is you want to get out of art and double
hmm,
down on that, and you'll never be disappointed, because
yeah,
you'll get what you want out of it. So,
indeed, indeed, and
mm-hmm.
what a perfect way to end this
Yeah,
interview. Yeah, I've had real fun talking to you. It's been really
me
interesting
too.
listening to your answers, and yeah, just hearing everyone. Like, I've been interviewing a few people, and not a huge bunch, but just it's funny how similar themes come through when people are talking about, I think it's really important that other people hear about what's happening on on the inside for
Mm-hmm.
artists.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I did enjoy um, the more inner perspective of these questions, which is a little
mm,
bit different than when I'm on podcasts, what they want to talk about. And I think it's a smart play,
mm,
because when it comes down to it, we all do live inside our heads. That's where, and
yeah,
we're just, our bodies are a conduit to what we're doing in the physical
mm-hmm,
realm. So,
mm-hmm,
that inside, introspective, take on these questions, I did tell my wife, I said, these are different questions than I mean, some of them I've
yeah,
had to face these questions before, but I went, the theme
mm-hmm,
of this is very different than what I had expected, and I did like it, though. I really much
mm,
enjoyed. I think that's why I liked answering the questions. Normally, I would probably have not even looked at your sheet that you sent over
yeah.
before most interviews, but I
Mhm.
read them and I went, I think I would like to think about these more than just
Yeah.
sporadically, because they
Mm.
were, yeah, they challenged. The surprise for me was the challenging in just some of the words, and in my reaction to the words. And I want to actually uh, dive into that. I was talking to Lauren, my wife, this morning about them, and I'm
Mhm.
like, this word of like, the permission word really, like, I mean, it's in the first question to it, the list. And I was like, I don't need permission. I like,
Yeah.
why do I need,
I'm
I
having a
like,
reaction.
really, I like, yeah, to permission, and like the like, how, what's the, like, the your self belief to keep you going. And there were a couple things
Mm-mm.
that made me go, there were sensitive spots for me that I think I'm
Mhm.
going to have to go back and unpack a little bit, why I
Mm.
had, and I don't even know fully the reaction that I'm having for a couple of these questions, but I do want to dig into that, because I did have, there were at least three questions where I had a
Mhm.
reaction of, I don't think this question should be asked, in a way, in this, like for
Yeah.
me, I'm like, no, I definitely, there's no attachment to me in this question. And that thought that immediately popped up, I thought to myself,
Ooh,
oh
maybe
well,
there is.
you yeah, you clearly need to talk about this one.
I know
Yeah,
there's
so thank you.
whenever I do, oh, no worries, that they all came to me in a meditation, by the way. Like, I
Oh,
literally
good.
I was thinking to myself, right, I need to ask these questions, and my mind kept going, and I know for a fact, because of all my mindfulness training and stuff, but when you are bashing the frontal lobe against a question, a problem, and you keep thinking about the problem, the answer doesn't come. You go away for a walk in nature, or you sit in
And it's
meditation,
boom.
suddenly it's like, oh, they were all just literally downloaded into my head, and I came out of the meditation and I just started furiously writing them all down. I was like, oh yeah, and I've got to ask this and this and this and this. But yeah, it's I love getting to the heart of things, because I feel not enough people talk about that.
It was usually drawing and painting for a while, because that was the grown up art to do. And I probably took it a little bit too seriously because, I used to turn my nose up at cartoons and turn my nose up at cutesy stuff because that's not real art. I guess I used to be an art snob.
Are you outing yourself as an art snob?
I was at one point I was an art snob.
Hello, my name is Heather and I'm a reformed art snob.